Hi everyone, hope you're all well. So for the practice this week, I thought it'd be quite nice to explore and work with the hips. So when we work with the hips, for many of us, it can have a nice effect for any issues in the lower back and also around the shoulder area as well. Quite often the shoulders can be encouraged and invited to drop down when we work with the hips. So hopefully you get some benefit from that. The practice that I've got planned is primarily floor based, but we will do one or two things from standing as well. We're going to be exploring sort of all ranges of motion in the hips, so external rotation, internal rotation, and looking at the hips in a more neutral plane as well. In terms of equipment, all you're going to need is a belt or something that resembles a belt. So it could be, a dressing gown belt, a belt that you actually wear. Yeah, so something to push the foot up into. And I'm going to be using a bolster, but we've looked at sort of in previous videos how you can make one of those for yourselves. Also a stack of cushions as work. We're just going to do one thing with that as well. So if you want to get yourself those bits and bobs, and then we'll make a start. So I'm going to invite us to start on our front for the practice today. And if you know that that's something that just doesn't work for you, feel free to come onto your back instead, and I can offer some alternatives for the movements that we are going to make on our front. So when you're ready, either coming onto your front or if you prefer laying on your back. And I'm going to let my elbows come nice and wide here, and I like to turn my head to one side, but some people prefer the forehead down. If that's your experience, feel free to set that up for yourself. And we're just going to spend a few moments here allowing ourselves to settle and arrive at our practice. If you want to close the eyes, you're more than welcome to. If you want to work with the eyes open again, that's absolutely fine. So giving your weight to the floor here and noticing that contact with the front of the body or the back of the body if you're lying on your back, but noticing and acknowledging that contact between yourself and the support of the ground beneath you. So if you are on your front, it is quite nice to feel the belly kind of moving back and forth from the floor as we inhale and exhale, and it can speak to our sort of the parasympathetic side of our nervous system, which is the side of the nervous system that's responsible for sort of calming and soothing. So tuning into that experience if you can. And noticing what you notice on the physical level of the body, maybe checking in with the hip area, and checking in with your energy levels as well. So it's a rainy day today. It's the first one we've had in a while actually, and that can have an effect on our energy as well today. Don't want to jinx things, but I've quite welcomed the rainy day today. It's encouraged me to rest a bit more, so I'm happy with that. So we're going to begin to make some movements. So if you're working on your back, I'll just show you briefly what you can do here as an alternative. If you're working on your back, what you're going to do here is draw one knee in towards you and simply let that knee rock back and forth. So as you inhale, letting the knee rock away from you, and as you exhale, letting the knee draw in towards you. But if you're working on your front like me, what you're going to do, you're going to bend the knee and let the sole of the foot point up towards the floor, and then what we're going to do is begin to make these circular movements with the leg, and that movement is coming right through into the hip, and it's also going to be having an effect on the lower back. If you want to, you can even place a hand there to feel sort of that area moving and being touched by that motion. And noticing how that movement is. So it could be that there are some phases of that movement that feel not as easily accessible as other phases. It might be the opposite. It might be a really nice sort of clear circuit. But if you are noticing any kind of parts of it that are a bit stuck, trying to consciously slow down at those phases. So for me, it's around here. I'm noticing a bit of resistance in the hip. And then when you're ready, you're going to change the direction of that circuit. And it might be a different story on this route, this second direction. So again, noticing any areas that you might need to slow down in. And then come into pause. We're going to keep the knee bent. And the movement we're going to make here is we're going to press the front of the knee down into the ground. And as you do that, you'll probably feel the front of the hip on that side lift as well. So allow that to happen. And then I'm going to press the front of the hip into the ground and let the knee lift. And then moving back to the front of the knee, the front of the hip, front of the knee, front of the hip, and then release. And you might notice that that side plants itself a bit differently now on the floor. If you have got your head turned to one side, now might be a good opportunity to turn it to the other. I'm going to keep facing this way just so you can still hear me, but if you want, you can change the direction of your head here. And then we're going to lift the opposite knee. So let the opposite sole of the foot lift towards the ceiling. And then we're going to again create this circuit on this second side. And noticing what you notice here. So I'm usually kind of preempting my left side to be more difficult than my right, because it usually is, but today I was proven wrong here, so it actually feels a lot freer for me today, so that's nice. I'm also noticing how this affects our breath as well. So for me, it helps to really open up the lower parts of my abdomen. I feel like I can take a deeper, fuller breath. Let's change the direction. And then shortly we're going to make that little movement with the front of the hip and the top of the knee. So come into pause. So we're going to press down with the knee so that the front of the hip on that side lifts. And then we're going to press down to the front of the hip and the knee will lift. It doesn't need to be a big lift, yeah? At all. And just moving back and forth. from the front of the hip to the top of the knee a few times. And then releasing. And maybe giving the pelvis a little rock back and forth. If you're on your back, yeah, so hopefully you've done your second side as well. If you're on your back, you can draw the knees into the chest and have a little rock back and forth. Okay, so I'm going to use my hands to support me here. I'm going to tuck my toes under and I'm going to lift up and back and then release my toes. So I'm briefly sitting back on the heels here. So I'm going to keep my toes together, but I'm going to let my knees separate. And we're going to come into this kind of wide-legged child pose. So I'm going to walk my hands forwards here. So for this one, I am going to be quite active in my arms and hands. So sort of yielding into the hands to reach my bottom back towards my heels. And if my head allows it, I'm going to bring my head to the floor. And finding my breath here, finding the support of the breath. And seeing if I can encourage my breath to move right down into that space in my hips. And then walking my hands back towards my knees and sitting up from there. So from here, I'm going to come to all fours. So just going to make a little movement in the hips that takes them from neutral to external and then internal rotation. So this is something that we've done in class, so hopefully it won't be too unfamiliar for you. So if it's comfortable, bringing the hands under the shoulders, knees under the hips. If it's easier for the wrists, let the hands come further forwards off the shoulders. So I'm going to work with my right side first, but you choose whatever's comfortable for you. So working with the right side, the movement I'm going to make, I'm going to tuck my toes under. Yeah, so I lift my knee and I tuck my toes under on that right side. And I bring the foot kind of halfway between my lower leg on that side. And then I lean back. I lean forward, I turn that leg out and I lean back again. I come forward, I turn that leg in and I lean back. I come forward, I release, I lean back. So I'll show you that again in slow motion. So I tuck my toes under, roughly kind of halfway between that lower leg. I reach back, I come forward, I turn the leg out, I reach back, I come forward, I turn the leg in, I reach back, I come forward and I release. So I'm going to start to speed it up a little. And I think sometimes this is one of those movements that actually when we do speed it up and we get a little bit of a rhythm going, it becomes a bit more easier to coordinate. So we're going to go a few times. That's kind of juicing and hydrating into the hip joint. Okay, and then eventually pausing. Before we do the second side, come to standing. And notice the change in the two sides. I feel like I'm like this at the moment. So noticing the change in the two sides. And that whole leg might feel a bit more vibrant. The sole of the foot might articulate itself differently against the floor. Notice the breath. And you may also get a sense of something changed in the shoulder on that side that you've been working with as well. So we're going to do the opposite side, so I'll spin around. So it's exactly the same thing. So coming to all fours, hands under the shoulders, knees under the hips. And then I'm going to tuck the toes under. I'm going to lean back, turn the leg out, lean back, turn the leg in, lean back and release. And again, I'm going to start to find a rhythm here. And again, noticing how this side might differ. Noticing how the breath begins to change. You might want to let some exhalations out through the mouth. Whew. Again, juicing, oiling up the hip joints. And then eventually beginning to finish up on this second side. And again, let's come up to standing, feel the result of that. Whew. So tuning into the side that you've just been working with, right up from the sole of the foot. And you might notice a change in the shoulder on that side, even possibly up into the jaw. And then we're going to come back down to all fours. So the next movement again is, I think, something that we're quite familiar with. So it's our dog having a wee movement that we're going to make. So the movement comes from the hip. So if it helps, have a feel around the hip joint. So bringing your hand right up to the head of the femur on the side you're going to be working with. So you can get a sense of where you want to be moving from. So we're moving from the hip, and what we're going to do is we're going to lift the leg up and out. And we really want to keep that movement into the hip as opposed to the pelvis, yeah. So it's just the hip, and that might mean the leg doesn't come up as high. It's certainly the case for me, but that's okay. And usually when we're working from the hip as opposed to the pelvis, you'll feel something going on around the outer edge of that hip. So it's really speaking to those outer hip muscles. I'm going to repeat that a few times. And then pause. Let's sit back on the heels briefly to give the wrists a bit of a break. And even sitting back on the heels, it might feel a bit different on the side that you've been working with compared to the other side. And then we're going to take it to the other side. I'll spin round. Come to all fours again. And then again, we're going to make that movement from the hip as opposed to the pelvis. Notice how this side might differ. And don't be kind of surprised as well if you begin to get quite warm. When we work in the hips, it can build a lot of heat in the body. That's certainly my experience anyway. So we'll go a few more times. And then releasing, coming back to sit back on the heels. And again, it might feel a bit easier, a bit more comfortable to sit back on the heels after what we've just done. Let's take it into a wide leg child pose again. So keeping the toes together, separating the knees and walking the hands forwards. So we've got that yield into the hands so we can reach back with the tail towards the heels. If the head allows it, bringing the head down towards the floor. And again, this might feel different now after the work we've just done. It might be easier to sit back into the hips. And then walking the hands back from there, sitting back on the heels. So we are going to come onto our back here. So this is where we're going to need our belt or our improvised belt, whatever we're using. So coming onto our back, we're going to have the feet on the floor, knees up towards the ceiling. So we're going to do a little bit of work in Supta Padangusthasana. And we're going to do all the variations of this, so where we visit external and internal rotation as well. So let's draw one knee in towards us. We're going to place the belt around the ball of the foot and we're going to extend that foot up towards the ceiling. So as always, the belt is simply there for something for the foot to reach up into. So the hands are nice and light on the belt, so we're not pulling the belt, we're not yanking the leg, it's the leg that's doing the work here. We want to think about anchoring down with the back of the pelvis, so we're not lifting up away from the floor with the pelvis. And really spreading into the sole of the foot. And finding the support of our breath here. So when we can really allow the breath to fully move into the body, when we're in this position, what usually happens is because of the referred movement of the diaphragm, the leg will move back and forth. So what we're looking for is that as we inhale, the leg has the opportunity to sway away from us. And it's just a small movement. And as we exhale, the leg might be able to draw a little closer towards us. And that's us using the support of the breath. If we're holding onto the belt too hard, we're stopping that. Yeah, we're literally putting the blocks on the breath being able to move into those spaces. So that's the aim here. You've got the option, yeah, I know what, you know this, to extend the opposite leg away. I'm not going to today. I was running this morning like a crazy person, so I'm going to keep that knee bent for today. Okay, so we're going to stay on this side. We're going to take hold of the belt in the hand that we're in with the hand of the leg that we're working with. We're going to draw the opposite knee in towards us, and we're going to separate the legs into this V shape. And I'm not thinking about bringing this leg towards the floor. I'm thinking more about the toes arcing up towards my head, if that makes sense. Yeah, so the leg's not traveling in that direction, it's traveling more in that direction. And I've got hold of my other leg with my hand, and I'm encouraging the weight to be distributed evenly across the back of my pelvis so I'm not falling over to one side or the other side. It's a little bit trickier to find here, but also again look for the support of the breath. So as we inhale, it might be a moment that the leg can sway away from us, and as we exhale we might be able to draw the leg in towards us. Again, the hands are light on the belt. We're finding that support spread into the soles of the feet. And then when you're ready, eventually release it. Bring the foot without the belt back down onto the floor with the knee bent. We're going to extend the leg we're working with up towards the ceiling again. And this time again, I'm taking the belt in to both hands. Yes, I've got one side in one hand, the other side in the other hand. And this time I'm letting the leg travel across the midline, and this lower leg is also going to mirror that movement, so the legs are crossing over each other. And when I do that, I have to be mindful that I'm not taking the pelvis with me, so I still want to stay anchored back and down with the pelvis. So it's almost like I'm imagining the sole of my foot lifting up on this diagonal plane towards the ceiling, and then the head of the femur wants to root down into the floor. So I've got this arrow travelling up and this arrow travelling down. Again, we can still use the support of the breath. So as we inhale, the leg might move away from us. As we exhale, we might be able to draw the leg a little closer towards us. And then letting go of that. We're going to stay on this first side, so let's give the legs a little bit of a jiggle and shake. We're going to stay on the side we've been working with, and I'm going to place the outer edge of the foot I've been working with on top of the opposite thigh. And I'm extending into the heel of the leg that I'm working with, and that's going to help protect my knee. And then I'm going to lift that opposite foot up away from the floor. I'm going to imagine that the foot's against a wall. Yeah, so it's not passive. I'm going to imagine it's against a wall. And I'm going to use that to help me draw the legs towards me. You can take a hold with the arms and the hands, but I tend to find that just brings tension to the shoulders. So I like this imagery of a wall. You can actually do it against a wall. I think we've done that in class as well, haven't we? So again, finding the support of the breath. So as we inhale, you might feel the legs rock away. And as we exhale, we might be able to draw the legs towards us. And then releasing there. You might want to let the legs extend along the floor, or you might want to give them a little bit of a jiggle and a shake, or you might want to do a bit of both, whatever feels good for you. And then we're going to do that all again on the opposite side. So let's draw the opposite leg in towards us. Taking the belt around the ball of the foot, and we're going to extend that foot up towards the ceiling. So all the same stuff still applies on this second side. Spread into the sole of the foot, anchoring back down with the back of the pelvis. not gripping for dear life onto the belt. If you want, you can extend the opposite leg away. It's entirely up to you. And let's find our breath here. And let's bring our awareness into this side, see how it differs from the other side. What can we feel? What bits are we feeling resistance? What areas are feeling open? So it becomes more of an exploration as opposed to kind of just making a shape. Yeah, constantly engaging with the pose. So let's take it into external rotation now. So we're going to take the belt into the hand of the leg that we're working with. We're going to draw the opposite knee in towards us and we're going to separate the legs so we make this V shape. We want the weight to be falling evenly across the back of the pelvis, reaching out through the soles of both feet. And if we can again here, finding the support of the breath. Again, making it an inquiry. What can I feel? What's going on? What bits are shouting loud? What bits are quiet? Why is that? What can I do? Is there a little movement or adjustment I can make to make that a little bit more easy, a little bit more comfortable? And that's how we begin to make the changes in the body. Check in with the hands, yeah, I've just noticed me gripping on there. You might get some shakes, yeah, it's common. Let me know. Oh, and then release. Let's take it to internal rotation. So the leg that we're working with, again, lifting up towards the ceiling, the opposite foot's on the floor. I'm going to take it across the midline and that bottom lower leg is going to mirror that movement. My belt's in both hands now. Again, I'm trying to stay even across the back of my pelvis so I'm not rolling over onto one side. Thinking about this two-way movement, yeah, so reaching out through the sole of the foot, but the head of my femur, the very top of my leg, wants to root down into the ground. So it's a bit like when we work with the spine, the crown of the head and the tail. Exactly the same principle here, yeah, the sole of the foot, head of the femur, these two different directions. Finding the support of the breath. And then eventually letting go of that. If you want to stay a bit longer, yeah, you can always pause the video. Let's give the legs a little shake out before we come to the final movement here. So we're going to thread the needle again. So we're going to bring the leg that we've been working with, we're going to bring the outer edge of that foot onto the opposite thigh, extending out through the heel. That's going to protect my knee. And then I'm going to lift the opposite foot up away from the floor, imagining that that foot's against a wall. I'm going to use that to help me draw the legs in towards me. I'm going to keep my arms and my shoulders nice and neutral here. Finding the support of the breath here. As we inhale, we might rock away. Exhale, we might draw in. Noticing how this side differs. think as well, when we work in this pose without the arms, there has to be a bit more engagement around the abdomen, which is a good thing. Yeah, it's going to help to stabilize the lower back. So you might feel that engagement around the belly. And then letting go. When you're ready, either lengthening the legs out along the floor or giving the legs a jiggle, or a bit of both. You don't want to let the arms and hands get involved as well. So popping your belt to one side for now. So we're going to do a little bit of rolling, and we're going to take these rolls into propeller. So I can't remember if we've done much propeller in class, so if you haven't and this is new for you, it's really good fun actually. So I'm going to come to my back, I've got my feet on the floor, my knees are up towards the ceiling. I'm going to draw my knees in towards me. So to begin with, all we're going to do, which we're quite familiar with now, is do a little bit of rolling right over onto one side and then all the way over onto the other side. And this movement, there has to be a bit of an instigation from the hips here. So again, this is actually a good movement to work with the hips. Next time I roll all the way over onto one side, I'm going to let my top arm and top leg reach along, and I'm going to keep this leg lifted. Yeah, sometimes I work with it down, but today I'm going to keep the arm and the leg lifted. And then I'm going to take that over to the other side. My sofa's in the way. So repeating that variation on both sides. Then we're going to take it into propeller. So next time we're on one side and we've got one side of our body lengthened out long, what I'm going to do, this top leg I'm going to let swing slightly back, and this top arm comes slightly forwards. So I've got a little bit more of a diagonal going on there. Few breaths there. And then this top leg is now going to swing forwards, and this top arm is going to swing back. And I allow that movement to come right up into my upper back as well. I'm going to take it back to that more of a diagonal movement. And then rolling towards my back. And what's quite nice to do is to pause in that open face for a few breaths. Explore the breath moving. And then coming back and forth again. And then let's draw it back in. And let's roll over onto the other side. We're going to do that again over on this side now. So I'm going to lengthen the top arm and the top leg. I let the leg sway back. The top arm comes forward. And then I let the leg swing forwards as the top arm swings back. Then I open out. Coming back and forth. So I'm really reaching long with this top arm and leg. You might want to pause in that open phase for a few breaths. Bringing it back. And rolling onto the back again. Let's come up from there. So let's roll over onto one side and bring it up from there. So we're going to have a little play in our pigeon lunge now. Now I know this can be quite, it can be quite a lot, this pose, yeah, particularly around knees as well. And if that is your experience, I'll show you the alternative. So the alternative we've already done in this practice, but you can come back to it, which is coming into our thread the needle pose. It's exactly the same movement in the hips, it just takes the weight away from the knees. So if you would prefer to do that variation, you can substitute that in here. So I'm going to come on to all fours. I'm going to bring the hands slightly forwards of my shoulders. So I'm going to work with this right leg to show you, but you can choose whatever side you want to work with. So what I'm going to do with this right leg, I'm going to tuck my toes under, I'm going to lengthen the leg back behind me. I'm not taking my whole body, yeah, I'm just lengthening the leg. I'm going to slide it forwards and I'm going to see if my knee can say hello to the back of the corresponding wrist. So I'm working with my right leg, so I want my right knee to come behind my right elbow, not elbow, right wrist. And then I'm going to take it back and forward. I'm just going to make that movement a few times to see how my hip is feeling about that. So my hip's quite happy with that movement. So if it is, I'm going to take it a little further. You might want to continue just making that movement back and forth. That's absolutely fine. You might want to bring it over and do thread the needle instead. But if you do want to take it a little further, we'll take it into pigeon lunge. So what we'll do, this opposite leg, I'm going to lengthen back behind me. If it feels a lot in the knee, you can keep the toes tucked under and lift the knee slightly. But if you're working with the leg, with the foot not tucked under, I'm really allowing that top of the foot to press into the floor so there's minimum weight on my knee. I'm going to take a peek at this front leg again. So I really want to extend into the heel of this front foot. So it's a bit difficult for me to show you from this angle, but I hope you can see. I'll show you from here as well. So I've extended my leg back, I've brought it behind my knee, I've reached the opposite leg back, and then I extended into the heel of this front foot. Yeah. So really letting the weight press into the top of that back foot so that the knee isn't kind of collapsed onto the floor. If it helps, you can tuck the toes under. I'm going to bring my hands slightly wider than my shoulders. I'm going to encourage my chest to come through the tops of my arms. There's a little bit of a back bend going on here as well. Ooh. If it feels okay, we can come down onto the forearms. And if you would like to, we can bring the forehead down onto the hands. What I'm really aiming to do though, if I do that, I want to keep my pelvis as level as I possibly can. So my belly button is directly above the ground, so I'm not tilted over to one side. Keep that awareness into the back foot. And you'll know you've you've got that awareness in the back foot, because normally it makes this bit a bit more musical. Yeah, normally. And you're going to stay here for a few breaths, but you can come out whenever you want to. Finding the support of the breath. If you prefer to make it a higher pigeon lunge, you can come back up to here. So let's come out of it from here. So to come out of it, what I'm going to do, I'm going to use my hands to support me. So this front foot, I'm going to bring back. And before you do the other side, you might want to come up to standing. Feel the difference in the two sides. Again, you might feel that right up into the shoulders, the neck, the jaw. And then we'll come to the opposite side, so I'll spin round. So if you prefer to do thread the needle, that's fine. We're going to start with that little movement, so bringing my hands slightly forward to the shoulders. So with my opposite leg now, I'm going to lengthen back, and then I'm going to bring that knee behind the wrist. Lengthening back, bringing that knee behind the wrist. So there's an external rotation in my hip. To get a sense of, is my hip, is my body happy with that movement? If so, you might want to take it further. Extending the opposite leg back, reach into the heel of the front foot. Staying into either the top of the back foot or tucking the toes under. And then we're going to bring the hands slightly wider than the shoulders, encouraging the chest to come through the tops of the arms. Few breaths there if it's comfortable. Or you can go back to that movement of coming back and forth with the leg. And then if you would like to, you might bring the forearms onto the floor. You might want to bring the forehead down. Whatever's comfortable for you here. You might prefer to work in a high pigeon lunge. And again, checking in with the pelvis so that the belly button is directly above the ground, yeah? It's not tilted to one side or the other side. Keeping that connection into the back leg. Keep breathing, finding the support of the breath. Keep checking in, have I got that connection with the back leg? Am I reaching out through the heel of this front foot? What things can I feel? Where can I feel them? Can I make any slight adjustments and movements to ease that? Am I really uncomfortable? If I am, should I come out of this? Absolutely. And then to come out, I'm going to use my hands again to support me. I'm going to take this front foot back. And then again, I'm going to come to standing to feel that. Be careful when you do come to, if you do come to standing, because it can feel very different, yeah, a bit of a dead man's foot sometimes, so just take your time. And then we're going to come to, we're going to come to do some standing work here, so I'll just grab a drink. So we're going to do a little bit of work in tree pose, and we might bring it into Parsvottanasana as well. So coming to stand with our feet roughly hip distance. And let's root down into one foot. So I'm going to root down into my left foot. And I'm going to pick my right foot up away from the floor. I'm going to take a hold of that right knee. So thinking about my hip, and thinking about my hip being independent from my pelvis, just like when we were doing the little dog wee movement before, I want to move my hip out. Yeah, so my knee will follow, but the movement comes from the hip. The pelvis isn't going, the hip is going. And again, it might make it a less of a rotation out, but that's okay, it's coming from the hip. And then I'm going to take it across the midline, again from the hip. And then back to neutral. And release. Let's do the opposite side. So rooting down into your opposite foot, so that'll be my right foot. I'm going to pick my left knee up, the left foot up. I'm going to take a hold of the knee from the hip on that side. So I'm really taking my awareness into that hip, thinking about what I can feel there. I'm going to take it out. So my pelvis is still facing forwards. And then I'm going to take it across the midline. Okay, my pelvis is still facing forwards. And then I come back to neutral and I release. Let's go the first side again. So rooting into one leg, picking the opposite leg up, thinking about the hip. I'm going to move out. I'm going to move across the midline. I'm going to come back to neutral. I'm going to move out. I'm going to place the foot just below the knee or lower. I'm not worried about coming up high on the leg at the minute. Just below the knee. And the reason is, I want to think about this area of the hip. So often when we have the leg high up, this part of the hip starts to close off. So here I can still have that external rotation with a nice opening here. Pause for a few breaths. And let the arms do what they need to do to support you here. And then release. Opposite side. So rooting down to the opposite leg, I'm going to pick the opposite foot up away from the floor. Moving from the hip, I'm going to move out, across the midline, back to centre. I'm going to move out again. I'm going to place that foot just below the knee. So I've still got this opening in the side, the outer edge of my hip, but with an external rotation as well. And again, a few breaths here. A bit wobbly for me on this side today. And then release. So let's come back to the first side, and then if you want to take the leg higher here, we can do, yeah? Now we've had that little opening there. So going back to the first side, I'm going to pick the opposite foot up. I'm going to move it out from the hip. I'm going to move it in, back to neutral. Let's go out again. And this time placing the foot wherever is appropriate for you. So it might be a bit higher on the leg. It might be back where we were. It might be lower down. Again, that's absolutely fine. And let's use the arms to support us here, whatever way they need to. It's so hard for me to balance when I can see myself in the in the sort of the screen on the laptop wobbling away. And release. Opposite side, so rooting into the opposite leg. Let's lift the opposite knee. Turning out from the hip. Turning it in to the midline. Back to centre. Turning out and then placing that foot wherever's appropriate for you. Using the arms and the hands to support you. Finding your breath. And then releasing on this second side. Give the legs a bit of a shake. So I'm going to do one more movement from standing here. So we're going to come to tree pose again, but we're going to add in Parsvottanasana as well. So we're going to transition to that. So I'm going to come to the front end of the mat because I'm going to need some mat behind me here. So let's go up into tree. So root down into, so going back to your first side, so rooting down into one leg. I'm going to lift the opposite knee. I'm going to place it wherever's appropriate for me, using the arms and the hands to support me. Now the movement I'm going to make here is I'm going to raise the arms up above my head. I'm going to release that top leg and I'm going to step it back behind me. So I've got these tram lines. And this might be a familiar position because then we're going to come into Parsvottanasana here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring my hands to rest on my lower back. I'm going to lengthen out through the crown of my head and out through my tail. And I'm going to travel, lengthening, lengthening, lengthening. I'm watching as well, so I've noticed myself doing this actually when I've been editing back videos, so really watching the back of the neck, that we're not hiking the head up. I'm so used to doing that. It's a habit that dies hard. So really trying to keep the back of the neck long. Watching we're not locking into this front knee. And then stepping the back foot. Forwards. Opposite side, so this time rooting down into the opposite leg, lifting the opposite knee, placing that foot wherever's appropriate for your tree pose. A few moments there, finding your balance, drawing the arms up over the head, and then I'm going to step this top foot back behind me. And I've got that reach in the spine, that length in the spine. I'm going to keep that as I bring my hands to rest on my lower back. And then again, I'm going to begin to lengthen through the crown of the head and out through my tail. Keeping the back of my neck nice and long. Watching I'm not locking into this front foot, front leg. And then stepping the back foot forwards. So from here, I'm just doing a little time check. Yeah, from here, we're going to make our way to rest down. So this is where we're going to need our bolster. So I'm going to have my bolster. And I'm going to come to lay down on the mat. So you can either use a bolster, or you can use one of the ones where we wrap some pillows up in a blanket, or even just a stack of pillows to give you a bit of height. Will be absolutely fine. I'm going to place the outer edges of my feet on my bolster, and I'm going to bring the soles of my feet together. And then I'm going to bring my bottom close in towards my bolster or my little raise. So my feet are really active here. So I'm spreading out through the soles of the feet, the balls of the feet are coming towards each other and my heels are coming towards each other. So the feet are nice and active. I'm going to come to lay back. Oh. So it's Baddha Konasana pose, this cobbler's pose sometimes known as. This is like a reclining, more restorative one. So even though it is quite a passive pose, the feet are still really active. Yeah, I'm not letting the feet go. If you do let the feet go, just feel there might be a bit of a change around sort of the pelvic floor area. So you can see how special the feet are and how many things they can influence. So we really bring some life to the soles of the feet, we're drawing the feet towards each other, and you'll feel a bit more of a switching on around the pelvic floor area. Oh. And letting the arms rest at the sides of the body. And we're just going to spend a few moments here enjoying that. So I'm going to spend a few moments here. If at any point you kind of want to come out of this, just let your legs come to lengthen out over the support that you're on. And we are going to make the transition anyway to Shavasana from here. So if you need any extra leisure, maybe have them near you so you can kind of throw a blanket over you if you need to. So keep checking in with the feet. Keep checking in with the breath. So if you're comfortable in this setup, yeah, you can stay here for your Shavasana. If you want to, you can, or if you haven't already, you can extend the legs over and beyond your support to come into your Shavasana here. But finding what's comfortable for you and have everything you need to help you with that. So any extra layers if you need any extra support. We're going to continue our reading of the sutras here. So we've almost finished section 1 of the sutras. So we are now on to verse 45. Yeah, verse 45 of the first part. So really allowing yourself to settle down here and rest deeply into the support below you. So verse 45. The range of subtle objects includes all the levels of creation, extending to the limit of the gunas. These levels of samadhi are concerned only with external objects. But on refinement of the 4th stage of absorption, there is the dawning of the spiritual light of the self. This level is Ritambhara, where consciousness perceives only the truth. I'll read those verses again for you. The range of subtle objects includes all the levels of creation, extending to the limit of the gunas. These levels of samadhi are concerned only with external objects. But on refinement of the 4th stage of absorption, there is the dawning of the spiritual light of the self. This level is Ritambhara, where consciousness perceives only the truth. So I'm just going to give you a few moments here to let your body absorb the benefits of, or any benefits of the practice that you just completed, and absorb the words of the sutras there. So really letting yourself rest down deeply here. So letting some gentle movement return to the body. So that might be letting fingers and toes slowly move, maybe letting the head gently turn from one side to the other if it's comfortable in the neck. You might even want to take a couple of deeper inhalations, maybe letting the exhalations come out through the mouth. If you would like, generating some heat in the palms. And this, as with everything we do, this is optional. Some people don't like to do this part, but I quite like the heat in my hands. So if it's not appropriate for you, just leave it out. And then placing the hands either over the eyes, or if you feel like somewhere else is going to benefit from that heat, you can place the hands there instead. And then slowly, eventually, letting the eyes begin to open, adjusting to any light. And if you have the hands there, eventually bringing the hands away from the eyes, or taking the hands away from wherever you place them. Letting the eyes open, drawing the knees in towards your chest, having a little rock from side to side. And allowing that momentum to carry you all the way over onto one side, and spend a few moments here resting on the side of the body. There's no rush to get up. And eventually, when it's appropriate for you, if you want to stay here for a bit longer, you're more than welcome. If you want to bring yourself up eventually back to a comfortable seated position from there, you can. So we will leave that there for this week's video. As always, yeah, it's a pleasure to do this for you. It's always lovely to hear from you. I hope you're all doing well. The weeks seem to be flying by, which is just crazy. But yeah, looking forward to seeing you all soon, hopefully. So take care. I'll see you next time. Bye.